Hello and welcome to this podcast brought to you by the Norfolk Historical Society, which for the past 122 years has worked to preserve and promote the unique history of Norfolk County. My name is Andy Blackwood, and our guest today is Shandy Pace, a journalism graduate of the University of Guelph-Humber who was raised in Norfolk County. She has a website, shandypace.com, which contains a varied mix of writings on local and Canadian history, culture, and humor. However, our focus today is on her project called Small Town Canada, a website which focuses on highlighting small towns across the country, including here in Norfolk, both through articles and videos. Shandy, welcome. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
First of all, I have to say, Shandy is a former student, a very good student at that, and a fine midfielder on the soccer pitch. First of all, what got you interested in journalism?
Well, in high school, I was really into watching hockey, and I thought I wanted to go to school for journalism to be more of an on-air personality, just because I liked talking about it so much. But it kind of pivoted, and once I was there, I realized I liked writing a lot more, so I've kind of taken a more behind-the-scenes approach to journalism. And
your ultimate ambition, of course, is to work for an NHL team, right? Which one would you prefer if you had your choice?
Well, if I did have a choice, I would work for the Pittsburgh Penguins, of course, my favorite team. But I believe that the NHL, I love history, and the NHL, I think, should focus more on highlighting the history of their past and sharing stories about to new fans about their history, because I think that's important for people to learn about.
Yeah, and continuity is important for people who haven't been exposed to it before. They need to have that perspective. So, pivoting from that, why did you create Small Town Canada?
The idea for Small Town Canada came to me when I started looking into the history of my own family and the communities that they were a part of. So I realized just how much I loved learning about that, and I wanted to uncover more history of small towns because of looking into my own family history.
And your family is from which area?
My family's from Vienna. Mm-hmm. My dad's side of my family's from Vienna, and my mom's side of the family's from Bell Island, Newfoundland. So I got to go there and kind of highlight that community as well.
I saw that on your on shandypace.com.
Mm-hmm. Those were my first explorations, I guess, into my own family history.
And we were just talking before. You had said that you were in Toronto for a long time, but you had this yearning to get back out of the big city and back to a small town. So that must have had some kind of effect as well on the creation of this.
100%, yeah. I moved back to Guysborough, actually, which is in Norfolk County, during COVID, and I realized how much I loved living in a small town, and so, creating Small Town Canada just gives me the opportunity to visit a lot of small towns, kind of like my own, that I can share their history about.
I think one of your first projects that you contacted me about to direct you to the archives here in town was the cemetery in Guysborough, which you've just mentioned. Is there any kind of personal connection there, or just that's where you ended up?
Yeah, so that is how we reconnected after so many years. And I'm from Guysborough, but unfortunately they don't have a lot of old buildings still around from the original settlement. And so I chose to focus on the cemetery because that is around, and they do have a plaque there that talks about the church that was standing there for over 100 years, between 1864 and 1971. So they do have like a bit of history tied to the cemetery, which is kind of why I chose to focus on it.
And where is it?
It's actually outside of where Guysborough technically is now. It's like halfway between Guysborough and Straffordville, even though it's still called the Guysborough Cemetery. Mm-hmm.
You've done a number of communities on your website. Which local Norfolk ones have you done?
Yeah, so I focused on Guysborough, Delhi, and Waterford in Norfolk County. After recording this, I'm actually going to Victoria to do a feature for Small Town Canada on that town. The area is known for being one of the most active and important commercial centers between Niagara Falls and Detroit back in the 1800s. So I think they have an important story to tell, even though it's such a small community today.
And outside of Norfolk, and on your other website, which communities have you worked on?
Yeah, so the other communities that I've focused on for Small Town Canada have been Port Burwell, which recently it came out that their lighthouse is in need of repair. So I've gotten a lot of people coming to my website to look more into the information about that. Mm-hmm. I've talked about Vienna, obviously, because my family's from there, so I chose to do a focus on them as well.
The communities that you've chosen to highlight, is there a common thread running through them?
There's not really much of a connection. For the communities I've visited so far, it's more about a combination of learning or knowing some of the history beforehand, also having a personal connection to the area when I was younger visiting there, or just getting a recommendation from someone to visit there.
When I spoke to you a few months ago about doing this podcast, and just about a half an hour ago while we were having coffee across the street, I told you I was really glad you were highlighting local history, particularly in Norfolk. And then I found out that you're moving out of the area. Now, will we be seeing more programs on local communities around here, or will your focus be on the area around Elora, where I believe you said you were relocating?
Yeah, so I am moving to Elora, and I'm excited about the new adventures that I'll be able to focus on the communities there. But Norfolk County will always be my home. It's a wonderful area to live in, and every town has such an interesting history that's tied to agriculture, especially. So it might be a while before I focus on another town here, other than Victoria, obviously. But I am open to suggestions, and I will always come home.
So if the NHS were to entice you back to do something, you'd be into that?
Of course.
Oh, great. Now, why is it important for people to visit your site, Small Town Canada?
I believe it's important for people to learn more about the history of the communities that they live in, because although a town may look completely different than what it did 50 or 100 years ago, it's still fascinating to learn about how it became the place that it is today. Small Town Canada is a great resource for people to find that information along with pictures from their town back in the day.
Now, if people had ideas for you, for places they think would be a good idea for you to do, because your work is done mostly online. I mean, you out in the field as well. How can they find Small Town Canada online, or how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so my website is www.smalltowncanada.ca.
And we'll put that in the description underneath the podcast video.
I also have social media, which is also just linked on my website, and people can reach out to me anywhere through there, and I'm always looking for recommendations for places to visit, so hopefully I'll be able to come to a community near you.
Well, thanks for visiting with us. Thank you for your interest in your passion for history and the focus on the small towns that make up our area and our province and our country, and we hope to see more of your work in the future. Thanks for visiting us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to thank everybody for listening today, and I want to remind you that the Norfolk Historical Society has a website that you can visit. You can become a member or contribute on the website. You can follow us on Instagram. You can check out our Facebook page, and you can take a look at our YouTube videos, which contain all sorts of interesting things about Norfolk heritage and history. On behalf of the Norfolk Historical Society, I'm Andy Blackwood, and we'll see you next time.